Hi, welcome to the real life implementation related questions. See, these are the questions which are very important during the client interviews. Now, a lot of you may be working for some services company. If we talk about the Indian context, then if you are working for TCS, Cognizant, Accenture, IBM, Tech Mahindra, Infosys, Wipro, etc. So this video will help you a lot in understanding what are the clients looking for. So a lot of time the clients want to talk to the people who are certified or who have experience on Azure, and these are some of the questions that they ask. So today in this video we will just look at one of these questions, which is related to migration from an AWS Amazon Web Services to Azure. So what we are talking about is moving the files. It may be data files in different formats from AWS S3 uh, to Azure Storage. So this is a very popular interview question, and if you understand this very clearly, it will be easier for you to answer this in the exam or in the interviews. Please subscribe to my channel, because I'm going to drop in a lot of interview related questions which are real life implementation questions, and these are something which you will see if you're trying to switch the jobs, or if you're looking for new opportunities, or if you are a college pass out and you are looking to establish or get a job in a company, in a tier 1 company. This will help you out. Now let us try to understand under which scenario do we move the AWS files or the files which are kept in the S3 bucket into an Azure storage. So I'm just trying to highlight one business case. There may be some other business cases as well. For example, in my personal experience, I have seen that there is a company which has acquired two more companies, and they want to do a consolidation of the operating data and metrics related to these two acquisitions, and they want this enterprise wide data to be maintained in a new platform, which is a Azure based platform, and the client is already on AWS, as well as they have data sources and files on premises as well. So now what happens is, usually in the market, if you see, Azure is going very aggressive with respect to penetration into different accounts. So they are very competitive with respect to cost and the kind of services and offering they are provided. So you will see a lot of times a client has made a long-term at least 5 years of commitment or a partnership deal with Azure, and they want to implement and use Azure services. So due to this, your AWS may be operational under silos. Maybe for the first company it was operational, but from enterprise-wide reporting, this company wants you to move to Azure, and they will still have AWS on an ongoing basis for different purposes, maybe for addressing requirements for couple of departments from the old company. But with the acquisitions, they want to do an enterprise wide data acquisition, data maintenance, transformation, etc. into Azure. So we will have hybrid cloud. There will be on premises AWS cloud as well as Azure cloud. Now, before we go about to understand how does this migration work, let us first understand in a typical world. For example, if there is a construction site and there is a warehouse which is supplying materials to this construction site, how does the material supply work? First, try to understand that story piece. If you understand that story, then getting into the technical details of how this is done technically on Azure, it will be easy to understand as well. Take the example of a warehouse which is supplying commodities, cements, mortar, and other equipments to the construction site. So this is the warehouse where uh, all cement, mortars, and other equipments are kept, and then it transports these things via a truck to the construction site. Now this is a construction site. It's a plain field for now, and there are some trees, and then those equipments are bought here. You will slowly see a small construction site. Okay, and now what happens is, at the construction site there is a gentleman called Matt. What he does is, he is maintaining a register of how many commodities and how many equipments have been kept here and been delivered. So we saw in the story that there is a warehouse, and there is a construction site, and there is a pipeline which is in the form of trucks, or it may be uh, some sort of pipeline through which conveyor belts or etc., through which this material will be supplied. And then we saw this person called Matt who maintains the register. The main reason to maintain the register is if there were 1,000 bags of cement here, so those 1,000 bags, if it is supplied here, then it keeps a control that they got 1,000 bags, so that it should not happen that only 900 was delivered and we report 1,000. So this gentleman Matt takes care of making this entry in the register. So this is the story in the physical world. Now let's see virtually how it works. So this warehouse is our Amazon S3. This construction site is your Azure storage. This pipeline is your data factory pipeline. This register is your control table, and this gentleman Matt is your storage procedure which updates this control table. Because what Matt does is, the moment the truck comes or the moment the supply comes through this pipeline, he makes a note in the register. So that's what stored procedure will do. It will make a note in the control table, hey, I got 100 bag of cement delivered here. So this was the summary of the story. Now let's look in the Azure world how this is done, how this move is done. So the first thing you got to check is if you are going to do a move of a data volume which is greater than 10 terabytes, or is it less than 10 terabytes. I'm going to explain you the process which is greater than 10 terabytes, and then we need to understand if we need to do an incremental refresh or a full refresh or both. A lot of time, see, for example, in this requirement, AWS is not going away, it will still be there. So what happens is, after the first time it will be a full refresh, and then from that point onwards it will be an incremental refresh. So if you see here, there are three parties which are into play plus one support system. So three parties means you have to move your data from S3 to Azure storage, and you will do it via the data factory, and this will be your support system. That means this support system would be similar to your register in the example we saw for the construction site. It will have a control table where it will keep a control of what files or which files have been moved successfully, or if there were failures, it will keep that status. So how the system works is, there will be Azure Data Factory. Here in this case we call it a template, because that template is of ADF, and it connects to S3 and it connects to Azure Storage, and it reads the bucket from S3 and it moves that content to Azure Storage. Now there are two ways of doing it. Either you can do it sequentially, that means one file at a time, or you can do it in parallel, where multiple set of files will move in parallel, and that will be a fast process. Now what is the control table used for? Before we start this process, we have to create a control table, and we have to make the entries of all the files that we are going to move here. So what happens is, the first time ADF runs, it goes here, takes the file name, it moves it here from S3 to Azure storage, and then there is an update fired to the control table. This update is done via a stored procedure, and what does the stored procedure do is, it updates that record with the status of success or failure. That's why the role of this control table is important. So if you see here, there's a template that is available. That template is called historical data from S3 to Azure data lake storage, and this template is actually developed in ADF, that is data factory. But you don't have to develop it, it is already available. It has pipeline flows and etc already available. You have to just pass the parameters. Now what this template does is, it hits the control table. In that template, when you are trying to pass the parameters, you have to tell what is the AWS S3 source store, Azure target store, and update partition success. So this update partition success is done via a stored procedure in Azure SQL database, and this control table is also in the Azure SQL database. If you try to relate this with our construction site example, so this S3 source store is your warehouse, okay, and the target store is your building, the construction site. The external control table is your register, and the update partition success is that gentleman called Matt who updates this control table. So in our example, Matt was updating the register. Here the Matt is the stored procedure which updates the control table, which is similar to a register. Now when you are trying to configure this the data factory template, there are two pipelines which are created, and for the bulk copy from S3 this pipeline, you have to provide these two parameters: the AWS S3 bucket name and the Azure storage name, because this is the source and this is the target. Now one more thing that is important is parallelism. By default, if you just use this template, it will run one file at a time. So what if you know, so it works in a sequence. Like on Azure, the credit data or CSV will be migrated, then the customer data will be migrated, then the product data will be migrated. But if you want to do all three in parallel in one go, there is a process. You have to set the batch count. For example, you want three to be going in one go, you can set this batch count to 3. So this is the number which you have to set based on the configuration of the Azure services you have, and you can take it to 10 or 20 based on what volume you are moving and what is your requirement. Now the job status, it has either success is 1, failure is 0. So if you see a 1 status, that means it successfully migrated the file from AWS S3 to Azure Storage. Now before you use this template, which is a standard template, you have certain dependencies. uh, First thing is, if you see the construction site, you have to buy a register so that you can keep a note, and then you also have to employ that gentleman. You have to employ him, the gentleman called Matt, so that he can do his duty, keep a record in that register. So similar to that, here on Azure SQL database, you will have a control table, and this is the code of that table when you're trying to create the table. And then you will also have a stored procedure, and this is the code of the stored procedure. So this way, there is a standard set of code available which we should use. Azure strongly recommends us to use this. This brings us to the end of this video. Stay tuned for some more popular interview questions. Please remember, these questions are very important from a client and a services industry perspective. This video series will always help you with clearing interviews, uh, whether if you're trying to switch companies or if you are a fresher and looking out for a job in some tier 1 companies. Please subscribe to my channel. It keeps me motivated to put on some more contents. See you in the next video.